The grand chamber of the Galactic Council rose in majestic silence above the gathered emissaries. Representatives from hundreds of species filled their uniquely tailored stations, each customized to suit their diverse physiologies. A soft hum filled the air, translation systems tirelessly converting countless alien languages into universal comprehension. Ambassador Keth stood at the central dais, his normally vibrant blue skin drawn pale under pressure. His people, known across the stars as pacifists, master traders, and seasoned diplomats, had never before petitioned for military intervention. But today was different. Honored members of the council, Keth began, his voice unwavering though. His posture betrayed the strain. The Fani Federation addresses you in our gravest hour. The Ravok horde has begun encroaching into our territory. A wave of alarmed whispers cascaded across the hall. Everyone had heard of the Ravok. They were the terror lurking at the galactic fringe. Where they passed, civilizations crumbled. Planets were stripped to lifeless husks. Entire populations disappeared, swallowed into brutal slave networks. Keth tapped a control on the podium. A massive hologram sprang to life above the chamber, projecting a star map of the local sectors. Red indicators flashed ominously as Ravok fleets surged forward, targeting multiple inhabited systems. 3 weeks ago, Keth continued, they overran our mining installations in the Theta sector. 2 million lives gone without a trace. Just last week, they struck the agricultural centers of our partners, the Breen Collective. 5 billion are now under Ravok rule. The display zoomed inward, charting the projected path of the advancing forces. It was evident the core systems of 8 major civilizations lay directly in their crosshairs. Our joint defense forces cannot repel them, Keth said, his voice cracking ever so slightly. Their ships are too numerous, too advanced. We estimate over 1,500 war cruisers participating in this assault. An aged voice cut through the silence. And what exactly are you requesting, Ambassador? It came from Counselor Vex of the Theron Collective. His species had journeyed among the stars for millennia, watching empires rise and collapse. He leaned forward in his hovering seat, expression unreadable. Sanctuary, Keth answered plainly. We require safe harbor to relocate our citizens. The Ravok offer no diplomacy, no terms. They conquer, consume, and leave nothing behind. 8 billion sentient lives across our allied worlds face annihilation. We are asking for a chance to save them. Chaos erupted. The thought of relocating 8 billion refugees was staggering. The political, logistical, and economic weight would strain even the Council's most stable factions. It's infeasible, Counselor Nem of the Arcturus Trade Union declared, rising sharply. Our vessels are built for commerce, not mass transit. We simply do not have the infrastructure. Perhaps we can distribute them across multiple systems, another delegate suggested cautiously. And feed them with what? Nem snapped. House them where? The resulting collapse would send shockwaves across half the galaxy. Keth watched the heated exchanges with growing despair. He had known this would be an uphill plea, but he had not anticipated such immediate resistance. The Ravok armadas were mere weeks from breaching the first targeted systems. There may be another possibility, Vex said quietly. The chamber stilled. When a Theron elder spoke in such tones, others listened. The Council's newest addition, Vex continued, slowly choosing his words. The humans. They have dealt with crises before. A ripple of surprise spread among the gathered delegates. Humanity's admission to the Council 6 months earlier had gone largely unnoticed. Earth was a remote backwater planet, its significance minimal in the grand galactic scheme. The humans? Counselor Nem scoffed, amused. They've barely been starfaring for 2 centuries. What could they possibly contribute? Vex said nothing, only waited. The Earth file glowed on Vex's personal display. At a glance, the data was underwhelming. One densely populated homeworld, with a scattering of small colonies on nearby planets. Their level of advancement was modest, almost crude by galactic standards. They originate from a Class 12 death world, Vex said thoughtfully, scanning the document. Gravity is 3 times above galactic standard. The atmosphere contains 20% oxygen. A ripple of distaste moved through the chamber. High oxygen environments were notoriously corrosive. Many species required sealed suits just to visit such planets. Their evolutionary path is unusual, Vex continued, eyes narrowed as he read. They descend from persistence-based predators, pack hunters who pursued their prey until it collapsed from sheer exhaustion. Savages, Counselor Nem muttered with a sneer. Perhaps, Vex admitted, but savages who endured one of the most inhospitable planets we've ever documented. Their homeworld is racked with violent storms, seismic upheavals, and radiation levels lethal to most known life forms. Keth felt a flicker of hope ignite. Are they warriors? Could they fight the Ravok? Unknown, Vex answered calmly. Their military details are restricted. However, since developing spaceflight, they've expanded steadily. Their colonies are established on worlds most would classify as marginal or outright uninhabitable. The chamber buzzed again as the debate reignited. Some saw the idea of involving such a primitive race as ludicrous, even dangerous. Others insisted desperation left no room for pride. Even if they wanted to help, Nem challenged, what could they possibly offer? They might have 50 ships total. The Ravok have hundreds. Their vessels are unusual, Vex noted, bringing up schematics. Larger than necessary for interstellar travel. Overbuilt. Mass readings suggest construction densities nearly double what's standard. Crude engineering, Nem scoffed. They probably haven't figured out optimization yet. Keth, examine the human designs. Compared to the sleek silhouettes favored by most advanced civilizations, the human ships looked almost brutal, blocky, reinforced, and encased in what appeared to be multiple layers of armor. Perhaps they could provide evacuation support, Keth suggested. Even a handful of transports might ease the burden of relocation. The vote that followed was contentious. Doubts lingered about bringing such a young species into a crisis of this scale. But with no other viable choices, the Council reached a narrow consensus. Earth would be contacted. Vex personally oversaw the drafting of the message. It had to be precise, understandable, and non-threatening. Humanity was still unaccustomed to the intricacies of galactic diplomacy. Simplicity is key, Vex said finally. Frame it as a humanitarian appeal. That should resonate with them. Something direct, something urgent. The finalized transmission was sent on all standard diplomatic frequencies, directed at the Sol system and addressed to the Human Colonial Authority. To the representatives of humanity, the Galactic Council. Formally requests your assistance in a humanitarian effort. Hostile forces threaten several populated sectors. We seek aid in relocating approximately 8 billion refugees. Any assistance your people can offer, particularly in transport or logistics, would be deeply appreciated. The situation is urgent. Please respond as soon as possible. As the message streaked toward Earth at faster-than-light speed, Keth struggled to hold on to hope. Perhaps the humans would defy expectations. Perhaps their true capabilities were hidden behind modest reports and underwhelming statistics. Or perhaps they would simply decline. It would be the logical choice. Most species, when asked to intervene in a distant war beyond their borders, would opt for neutrality. Yet Keth had found something intriguing buried in humanity's cultural archives. A simple phrase that repeated throughout their military and civilian history. No one left behind. It was cited in battlefield reports, disaster responses, and rescue efforts. Maybe, just maybe, these death world-dwelling beings would understand what was at stake. The council session concluded with an agreement to reconvene once Earth replied. As the delegates filtered out of the grand chamber, Keth lingered at the central podium, eyes locked on the holographic star map. Red markers still marched steadily forward. The Ravok weren't waiting. Time was vanishing. Admiral Kane sat in the command center of Terra Station, Earth's largest orbital platform. The message had arrived 30 minutes ago, and he had read it twice already. Still, the words on his display carried a weight no repetition could reduce. 8 billion refugees. Hostile forces. A plea for humanitarian aid. Kane was a tall, aging man with steel-gray hair and a gaze sharpened by decades of command. For over 40 years, he had served in the Colonial Defense Force, climbing the ranks during humanity's expansion into nearby systems. He had fought pirates, managed evacuation crises, and survived bureaucratic chaos. But this was different. 8 billion lives? It was staggering. He tapped a control on his desk. "Get me Director Walsh, General Torres, and Chief Diplomat Reed. Conference Room Alpha, now." Within 10 minutes, the four most influential leaders in human space sat around a plain metal table. The room was bare, utilitarian, lined with maps of nearby colonies, trade corridors, and patrol zones. Director Walsh spoke first. As head of the Colonial Authority, she managed the civilian aspects of humanity's expansion. "I've reviewed the message 3 times. The request seems clear. They want evacuation support from a combat zone." "Nothing is ever clear when aliens are involved," General Torres countered. He commanded all human military assets beyond the Sol system. His hardened features showed the toll of maintaining security in a chaotic galaxy. "We need more intel on who we'd be up against." Chief Diplomat Reed pulled up data on his tablet. As humanity's chief liaison to the Galactic Council, he had the deepest understanding of xenopolitics. The message avoids naming them directly, but all signs point to the Ravok Horde. They're a conquest-driven empire. Enslave entire species, strip planets to nothing. Kane studied the wall maps. The nearest endangered systems were 3 weeks away at full hyperspace. "What's our evac capacity?" Torres didn't hesitate. "Colonial fleet totals 47 ships. Most are small, patrols or supply haulers. Our largest vessels can maybe hold 5,000 in emergency conditions." Walsh was already running numbers. "Even using every available ship, we're talking about evacuating 200,000 maximum." The silence that followed was heavy. 200,000 out of 8 billion. The scale was crushing. "There's another consideration," Reed said, voice lowered. "This is the Council's first real call for help. How we answer, it'll define our role in galactic affairs for decades, maybe centuries." Kane understood. This wasn't just a logistical problem. It was a test. A measure of whether humanity would act like a fledgling species hiding behind its borders, or something more. Humanity was still new to the galactic stage. Most alien civilizations saw them as crude upstarts, primitive beings from a violent world. Declining the Council's request would only reinforce that image. "Show me what we've got," Kane said. General Torres tapped the display panel. A fleet roster filled the screen, neatly categorized by vessel class and function. On paper, the numbers looked decent. 47 ships, ranging from light patrol craft to enormous colony haulers. "Our largest assets are the heavy cruisers," Torres explained. "Earth's Hammer, Luna's Pride, Mars Defiant. Each displaces around 800,000 tons. Built for long-haul colonization." Kane examined the specs. Human vessels didn't follow galactic design standards. They were bulky, reinforced, and powered by oversized reactors. They had to be. Earth's harsh environments demanded it, and the void between stars was no less forgiving. "The colony ships have vast cargo bays," Walsh added, "originally outfitted for transporting infrastructure, factories, habitats, life support modules." Kane narrowed his eyes. "Strip the cargo. What's our max personnel capacity?" Torres ran the figures. 20,000 per cruiser, maybe 30 if we compress space and strip non-essentials. Still a drop in the ocean. But something else in the data caught Kane's eye. Each vessel, even the smallest, carried reinforced hulls, radiation shielding, and extensive defense arrays. Not just for travel, these were survival machines. "These weren't built for refugees," Kane said aloud. "They're built to endure." Torres gave a grim smile. "Out here, everything's a warship. The pirates during the early colony years taught us that. Civilian vessels don't last." Reed looked uneasy. "The Galactic Council doesn't think like we do. They separate military and civilian roles. If we show up with armed ships, They asked for help, Kane cut in. We're giving it the only way we know how. He stood and approached the large star map on the wall. Red markers represented endangered systems. Human space was highlighted in blue. In galactic terms, the distance was minimal. General Torres, I want the full fleet prepped. Launch in 72 hours. Every ship we can spare. Torres blinked. Sir, that leaves Earth unguarded. Earth will manage. Those people won't. Walsh raised an eyebrow. Admiral, we're talking about 47 ships versus an empire fielding over 1,000. This isn't aid, it's suicide. Kane turned to face them. His expression was set in stone. Director, I've read the cultural summary we sent the council. What does it say about our military history? Walsh folded her arms. That we fought more wars than most species can count. More than that, Kane said, pulling up archive footage. We fight when we're outnumbered, when the odds are impossible. Images flashed, spears at Thermopylae, snow-swept ruins at Stalingrad, the siege of Terra Station during the Outer Colony Rebellion. Over and over, lost causes that humanity refused to lose. Time and again, Kane said, voice rising. They said we'd fall. And every time, we didn't. Torres gave a slow nod. Our strength isn't size or tech. It's that we don't know how to quit. Exactly, Kane said. They expect us to send transport ships, maybe some medicine. Instead, we'll send everything. Reed still hesitated. This will redefine how the galaxy sees us. Once they realize our so-called civilian fleet is armed to the teeth, good, Kane replied flatly. Let them see. He turned back to the display. Torres, load every vessel with emergency supplies, medical kits, shelter units, and weapons. Combat ready. Crew assignments? Volunteers only. They need to understand the risk. I'll coordinate with the Colonial Authority, Walsh said, typing quickly. We'll prepare intake centers on our outer systems. If we bring back billions, we'll need infrastructure. Kane looked around the table. Their faces showed fear, justified, but beneath it was resolve. That, too, was human. One last thing, he said. We don't leave people behind. Ever. If we find those refugees, we bring them home. Every single one. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace in a blaze of energy that echoed across 3 neighboring systems. 47 ships flared into view, their armored hulls gleaming in the pale light of a distant star. On the bridge of Earth's hammer, Kane stood tall, eyes locked on the tactical screen. What he saw made his jaw tighten. The system was in chaos. Thousands of civilian vessels fled the inner worlds, spiraling into panic. Overloaded and underpowered, most barely held together, and among them, like predators in a feeding frenzy, the Ravok patrol ships hunted without mercy. Status report, Kane snapped. Lieutenant Davis worked her console, voice clipped. 43. Ravok vessels in system. Targeting civilians. No organized defense. Local fleets gone. Kane watched the red indicators swarm over blinking civilian signals. The Ravok weren't just invading. They were culling. Kane watched 2 civilian transports vanish from the tactical display, wiped from existence, whether destroyed or captured, no longer mattered. The souls aboard were gone. Sir, the comms officer called out. Incoming transmission, Vani diplomatic frequency, it's Ambassador Keth. Put him on. The main screen lit up, revealing the dimly lit interior of a small, elegant vessel. Ambassador Keth appeared on screen. His blue skin pale, his large eyes filled with a mix of desperation and disbelief. His voice trembled. Thank the void you came, Keth said. We weren't sure if anyone would respond. Kane studied him. The alien looked as fragile as most species in the Galactic Council. Narrow shoulders, thin limbs, no visible sign of armor or defense. His ship was the same, sleek, polished, and utterly defenseless. Ambassador, Kane said, voice steady, we received your request for aid. We're here to help. Keth exhaled in visible relief. Excellent. We've designated evacuation zones on the outer moons. If your ships could begin transporting the first groups, Kane cut in. First, we deal with the Ravak ships attacking your people. Keth's expression collapsed into alarm. Admiral, no, you don't understand. The Ravak fleet is too strong. You must focus on evacuation while there's still time. Kane turned back to the tactical display. 43 Ravak patrol ships, 47 human vessels. The odds were closer than most commanders would ever hope for. Ambassador, Kane said, with respect, you called for aid. That means we don't leave civilians under enemy fire. These are rescue ships, Keth protested, not warships. The Ravak will destroy you! Kane almost smiled. It was an easy mistake to make. Human ships looked like outdated cargo hulks, ungainly, squared off, industrial in design. To the rest of the galaxy, they were clumsy, ugly things. But they were. Also something else. Lieutenant Davis, Kane said calmly. Signal the fleet. Combat formation. Weapons free. She hesitated. Sir, are you certain? We're on a humanitarian mission. Kane's voice was like iron. Exactly. And the most humanitarian thing we can do right now is stop those bastards from killing refugees. On the screen, Keth looked horrified as the human fleet came alive. From hulls that appeared smooth and unassuming, weapon ports emerged like fangs from hidden jaws. Armor plating shifted, shield generators activated, and defense fields shimmered into view. What had looked like lumbering transports were transforming, revealing their true nature. Then the human fleet began to move. The ships accelerated with sudden, brutal force, reactor output spiking to levels that blinded Keth's sensors. There, engines burned hot and blue, pushing thousands of tons of steel and armor into coordinated motion. The sleek elegance of galactic warships was gone, replaced by raw, undeniable power. Admiral, please reconsider, Keth begged. The Ravak have terrorized our system for weeks. No one has been able to stand against them. Kane's gaze was cold. Then it's time someone did. Move your ship to a safe distance, Ambassador. Things are about to get violent. The fleet spread out into attack formation, locking into a precision grid like pieces of a long-rehearsed dance. Each human vessel dwarfed the Ravak patrol ships, but the aliens had grown arrogant from easy victories. They relied on speed and shock tactics to dominate. This time, that wouldn't be enough. On the bridge of the Ravak 3rd Patrol Squadron, Flagship Commander Thich stared at the incoming sensor data. Report, he barked. His sensor operator's voice wavered. 47 unknown vessels approaching. Fast. Their energy output is unprecedented. Thach's fangs bared in disbelief. Are these numbers verified? Triple-checked, Commander. They're real. The tactical screen filled with icons. Massive ships closing in, fast, steady, and in perfect formation. Not pirates, not merchants, professionals. What species builds ships that size? Thach muttered. Unknown, his officer replied, but they're clearly preparing for engagement. Thach made his decision. The Ravak thrived on swift, overwhelming force. Whoever these newcomers were, they would be taught the price of defiance. All ships attack formation, prioritize the largest targets. The Ravak vessels turned to meet the threat. Sleek and angular, the black warships moved like predators. These same ships had reduced a dozen systems to ash. They had never lost. They were about to. The first exchange lit up the void. Brilliant blue streaks of plasma lanced out from the Ravak, line slamming into the leading human ships. Each bolt carried enough heat to vaporize standard galactic armor. They hit and dispersed harmlessly across shimmering shields. Impossible. Thach breathed. Nothing absorbs that much plasma. But human ships weren't standard. Their shields, fed by massive fusion cores, held firm, absorbing the blows like ocean waves hitting granite cliffs. Then came the human reply, from Silent. Gunports came a storm, hypervelocity slugs magnetically accelerated to a fraction of light speed. They tore across space in seconds. The Ravak's first line never saw them coming. The space between fleets became a killing field in seconds. Human projectiles, Dense metal slugs fired by magnetic accelerators slammed into Ravok ships with terrifying force. Unlike energy weapons, these rounds didn't burn. They smashed, punched and shattered. Hull plating built to deflect plasma and laser beams crumpled like tinfoil under the kinetic impacts. Entire Ravok ships broke apart, hulls rupturing, reactors detonating, life support venting atmosphere into the void. The sleek predators of the Ravok fleet died without grace. And that was just the beginning. Next came the human plasma weapons. Originally engineered for asteroid mining in the Sol Belt, they had been designed to liquefy stone by the ton. Against the Ravok's thin-skinned raiders, they were simply overkill. Where the kinetic weapons tore, the plasma cannons incinerated. In 30 seconds, 8 Ravok ships were gone, reduced to expanding clouds of glowing wreckage. Commander Thush stared at the carnage in disbelief. "Retreat!" he barked. "All ships, emergency hyperspace jump!" But the humans had been ready for that too. The human fleet's formation wasn't just for aesthetics, it was a trap. As the Ravok attempted to flee, they found every vector covered. The humans had positioned ships to block every known hyperspace corridor. The retreat was cut off, then the battle became a slaughter. The Ravok, used to hunting unarmed freighters and scattering primitive defenders, found themselves up against a wall of firepower. The human ships, armored like mobile fortresses, bristling, with weapons crewed by veterans of planetary hellscapes, pushed forward like a steel avalanche. Within 15 minutes, it was over. Not a single Ravok ship remained. Not a single human ship showed more than superficial damage. From the small Vani diplomatic vessel, Ambassador Keth watched in stunned silence. He had just witnessed what the Galactic Council had long believed impossible. A Ravok fleet defeated in open battle. A soft chime signaled an incoming message. Keth answered. Admiral Kane's face appeared, calm and professional. "Ambassador," he said, "the immediate threat has been neutralized. We're ready to begin evacuation operations." The message spread like wildfire across Ravok-controlled space. Military networks lit up. Political chambers went silent. Pirate groups that once thrived under Ravok protection quietly changed course. On the bridge of the Dark Conquest, Grand, Admiral Cole, Supreme Commander of the Ravok main fleet, read the transmission 3 times before accepting its implications. 43 ships. Gone. In a single engagement. By an unknown fleet. "Who are these humans?" Cole growled, his voice low and dangerous. Commander Rack, his intelligence officer, brought up the relevant files, what little there were. "A minor species," Rack explained. "From the outer galactic rim, single homeworld, classified as high risk. Atmosphere, gravity, biosphere, all considered hostile by galactic norms." "How long have they been in space?" "Less than 2 centuries, sir." Cole narrowed his eyes and turned back to the battle telemetry. The energy readings. The impact data, it didn't add up. Ships that massive shouldn't be able to move that fast, fire that hard, or hit with that kind of precision. "These numbers must be wrong," he said. "Multiple confirmations from different probes and listening stations," Rack replied. "Their weapon systems exceed projections by a factor of 6. Cole stepped toward the fleet display. His armada, the largest in Ravok history, was assembled and ready. 200 ships, 12 dreadnoughts, enough to crush any resistance. Enough to break a civilization. And how many of these human ships were involved? 47, sir. Where are they now? Moving deeper into Vani space, conducting evacuation operations. Cole's claws clicked on the edge of the tactical table. No one defies the Ravok, he said. No one wins against us. He turned to his communications officer. Signal the fleet. Set intercept course. I want to see these so-called warships for myself. Meanwhile, in the Vani home system, the second phase of the operation was underway. General Torres coordinated the evacuation from the surface of Valen Prime. The skies above were filled with fire as human landing craft streaked through the atmosphere. Like blazing meteors, each shuttle was built not like a passenger craft, but a fortress, plated in heat-resistant alloy, shielded against plasma fire, and capable of landing in nearly any terrain. Storms, sand, radiation, even enemy bombardment. These craft had been tested in all of it. One such vessel, call-sign Stalwart Echo, plunged through the clouds toward the capital city of New Haven. Inside, Captain Brooks gripped the flight controls, scanning the landing zone ahead. "Looks like half the planet's on the move," said his co-pilot, peering out at the streets. The view was surreal. Miles of Velani civilians moved in great rivers of people, families, elders, children, clutching bags, dragging carts, clinging to one another. There were no vehicles, no systems left. The cities had fallen into silence. "Landing Zone Alpha," came the voice of Lieutenant Park over the comms. "Coordinates locked. We've got heat signatures for 2 million in the immediate area. Minimal local security presence." Brooks eased the shuttle into descent. "Acknowledged. Deploying landing gear." The Stalwart Echo rumbled as it descended, its hull glowing from atmospheric friction. On the surface, refugees looked up as the thunder of human engines echoed through the sky. They had sent a message. Not just to the Ravak, to the galaxy. Humanity was here, and they had brought everything. The first human salvo didn't just damage the dreadnoughts, it gutted them. Secondary explosions blossomed across the Ravak formation as reactors went critical, hangar bays detonated, and internal systems failed catastrophically. Admiral Kane watched the data feed in silence. The humans hadn't fired a warning shot. They had fired to kill, and every shot had landed with surgical precision. On the Dark Conquest, Grand Admiral Cole's bridge shuddered under the impact of nearby detonations. His officers shouted conflicting reports. One dreadnought was already breaking apart. Another was venting atmosphere, crippled. "Return fire! Full barrage! Focus on their center!" Cole roared. But it didn't matter. The human fleet was already moving. They didn't hold position like traditional navies. They surged forward as one, each ship adjusting course in real time based on data shared across the fleet-wide battle network. The Ravak were used to overwhelming disorganized opposition. They were not used to enemies who adapted faster than they could react. Human destroyers punched through gaps in the Ravak formation like wolves through a broken fence. Plasma lances cut through the smaller Ravak ships while autocannons tore sensor, arrays, and weapon turrets from their hulls. Still, the Ravak fought back. Massed fire from cruisers took down a human corvette, its shield failing under the concentrated assault. Another human ship, Horizon Spear, lost control and spiraled into the burning wreckage of a Ravak destroyer. The impact killed both vessels. But that was two. 2 ships lost, out of 47. And for each one lost, the humans took down 10. From his station in orbit, Admiral Kane kept his tone level and clear. "Maintain pressure. Focus fire on their command vessels. Break their coordination." Back on Valen Prime, Captain Brooks returned for another load. His shuttle touched down next to the scorched landing zone he'd departed just minutes before. Refugees poured in, panic rising in their voices as the sky overhead flashed with distant explosions. "Keep moving," one of the crew shouted. "We're not leaving anyone behind." Torres, now coordinating from an orbital command station, looked down at the planet's surface and then up at the battle raging above. The human fleet was holding, for now, but every minute they bought was another 1,000 lives saved. "Evacuation priority to children, injured, and elderly," Torres said over the master comm. "We're racing extinction." On the Dark Conquest, Grand Admiral Cole was finally starting to understand. This wasn't a fluke. This wasn't a lucky species punching above its weight. This was war. Real war. And these humans, they had been forged for it. "Fall back to defensive posture," he ordered. "Regroup around the dreadnought line." But the dreadnought line was collapsing. One of the central Ravak flagships, dominance unquestioned, took a direct hit to its power core. The blast engulfed it in a white-hot explosion that briefly outshone the system's sun. On the human side, Admiral Kane barely blinked. He had seen worse. He had lost more, but not today. "Begin Phase 2, he said. The fleet shifted again, tightening into an encirclement pattern that drove deep into the heart of the Ravak formation. Ravak ships broke ranks trying to escape. They were hunted down by smaller human craft that moved with terrifying coordination, their AI-assisted targeting systems predicting and countering every maneuver. Within an hour of first contact, the Ravak main fleet, 200 ships strong, was in full retreat, or what remained of it. Only 56 Ravak vessels made the jump into hyperspace. The rest were destroyed, disabled, or drifting. On every frequency, silence fell. Admiral Kane exhaled slowly, then turned to the bridge crew. Status? Shields holding, Lieutenant Davis replied. Minor hull damage on 6 vessels. 2. Losses confirmed. Civilian evacuation at 38% and climbing. Kane nodded. Get me a channel to General Torres. The line opened. Valen Prime is clear, Kane said. Your skies are yours again. Torres didn't respond at first, then simply, understood. And, thank you. From the edge of the system, the retreating Ravak would carry word of what had happened here. Word of the battle they had started. And the force that had ended it, humanity, unbroken, unrelenting, and no longer underestimated. The Ravak ships simply ceased to exist the moment the human kinetic weapons struck, but those projectiles were just the beginning. Next, human plasma cannons, originally designed for asteroid mining, opened fire. Their searing beams, hot enough to melt solid rock, sliced through Ravak armor like knives through cloth. In the opening exchange, 6 Ravak dreadnoughts were crippled or destroyed outright, yet not a single human ship showed damage. Scatter. Formation! Grand Admiral Cole ordered desperately as the Ravak fleet broke apart, attempting to overwhelm the humans with speed and numbers. But Admiral Kane had already anticipated this move. The human fleet shifted with flawless coordination, each ship sliding into position to maintain overlapping fields of fire. Captain Miller commanded the heavy cruiser Mars Defiant, one of 3 vessels anchoring the human center line. His ship shook under the barrage of Ravak plasma bolts, but the energy shields held firm, absorbing every strike without strain. Target that dreadnought, Miller ordered his weapons officer. The Mars Defiant's main guns roared, releasing a thunderous volley, 6 kinetic rounds streaking through space, immediately followed by plasma beams that burned bright trails across the battlefield. The targeted Ravak dreadnought tried to evade, but human targeting systems, designed for precision work in asteroid fields, tracked it flawlessly. The kinetic slugs punched through armor at 6 distinct points, and the plasma beams cut deep into the ship's interior. Direct hit. The FI, weapons officer reported. Target is breaking apart. Across the battlefield, the same story played out again and again. Ravak ships, long accustomed to crushing weaker enemies with brute force, found themselves dismantled piece by piece by an enemy better at war than they had ever imagined. Grand Admiral Cole watched in growing horror as over half his fleet was lost within 30 minutes. How are they doing this? He demanded. Sir, their weapon systems are far more advanced than our intelligence suggested, and their coordination is perfect, his tactical officer replied. They're fighting as a single unit. Cole studied the tactical display. The human formation flowed like a living thing, ships supporting each other with overlapping fire patterns. Whenever Ravak vessels tried to flank, human ships shifted seamlessly to maintain coverage. These aren't merchant vessels or civilian transports, Cole realized aloud. These are purpose-built warships. The battle raged for another hour, but the outcome was never in doubt. Human ships pressed the attack relentlessly. Ravak vessels attempting boarding maneuvers were destroyed before they could close, while those trying to retreat found their paths blocked by human cruisers perfectly positioned to cut off escape. When the last Ravak ship exploded in a superheated fireball, the valence system fell silent, save for the low hum of human engines and the constant chatter of evacuation operations. Admiral Kane stood calmly on the bridge of Earth's Hammer, watching debris clouds drift where the Ravak armada had been. Damage report, he ordered. All ships report minimal damage. Lieutenant Davis answered. No casualties. We're ready to continue operations. Below, General Torres had managed to lift nearly 2 million refugees before the battle began, but millions more still awaited rescue. Resume evacuation, Kane commanded. I want every civilian off that planet within 48 hours. Ambassador. Keth's diplomatic vessel approached the human flagship cautiously. The Velani diplomat had observed the battle from a safe distance, still struggling to comprehend what he'd witnessed. The most powerful Ravak fleet ever assembled, 200 ships, including a dozen massive dreadnoughts, reduced to debris in less than 2 hours, all while conducting the largest evacuation in galactic history. Keth's shuttle docked with Earth's hammer, and he was escorted to the bridge. Admiral Kane greeted him with the same calm professionalism he'd maintained throughout the crisis. Ambassador, we've neutralized the immediate threat. Ground teams report excellent progress with the evacuation. We expect to have all refugees safely relocated within a week. Keth stared at Kane, confused. The galactic database lists your ships as civilian transports and colony vessels. But what I saw today was a full-scale military operation. Kane's expression remained neutral. You asked for humanitarian aid. We provided it. Every ship in our fleet is built for worst-case scenarios. That's how humans survive. But your weapons, your tactics, your coordination, this was a military campaign on a scale the galaxy has never seen. Kane's voice was steady. For humans, there's no real difference between a rescue mission and a military campaign. Both require the same thing: absolute commitment to getting the job done. Keth looked around the bridge of Earth's hammer. Every surface was functional and purposeful. Every crew member moved with military precision, yet their mission was saving lives. The contradiction made his head spin. What happens now? Kane gestured toward the tactical display, where human ships spread throughout the system, continuing rescue operations. Now we finish what we came here to do. Every refugee gets safely relocated. No one gets left behind. As if to underline the point, reports flooded in from across the system. Human shuttles landing on every inhabited world. Hospital ships treating the wounded. Transport vessels ferrying refugees into human space. The galaxy had requested humanitarian aid from a species considered primitive and had received a demonstration of military power beyond anything it had imagined, all wielded to save civilian lives. Ambassador Keth realized in that moment that everything had changed. The galaxy would never be the same again.